There have always been heated incidents, unsportsmanlike comments, and controversy in F1.
What an idiot! What an idiot!
But what I'm about to show you is on a whole other level. The first one that comes to mind for me didn't technically happen on track. It was actually in the pit lane. The 2007 season was set to be a spicy one from the very beginning, but honestly, nobody could have predicted that it would go this far. Qualifying for the Hungarian Grand Prix kicked off a domino effect that led to Fernando Alonso leaving McLaren for good. I need to give a bit of backstory first though. Alonso had just won 2 consecutive championships with Renault and made the switch to McLaren for 2007. The team in Woking wasn't just changing one driver though. They decided to take on 2 fresh faces and promoted Lewis Hamilton to the team for his debut F1 season. Lewis had just won the GP2 title the year before and was part of McLaren's young driver program since he was 13 years old. Ron Dennis just couldn't wait to get him in one of his cars. But the 07 season quickly changed from the dream driver lineup to a complete nightmare. From the very first race, Alonso and Hamilton were battling it out like crazy on track. They were both seriously fast. Lewis was trying to prove himself as the fastest rookie on track, and Alonso was trying to defend his crown, but it didn't take long for it to go downhill. After the European Grand Prix, halfway through the season, they were just 2 points apart. It was clear they were fighting each other for the title, along with Kimi Räikkönen.
I have a British teammate in a British team, and he's doing a great job, and we know that all the support and help is going to him.
So he decided to stop playing the team game completely, and then so did Hamilton.
You sort of learn what can happen in motorsport, who you can trust, who you can't, whether you believe people or whether you don't. And there's so much politics going around. It's really easy for that politics to affect you and your job. And the most important thing for me is just to focus on my job.
To be honest, I don't think either of them were ever too focused on team play to begin with, but it was clear now that they really didn't care anymore. And it became painfully obvious at the Hungarian GP. The heat between the two boiled over during qualifying, and it was honestly one of the most dramatic sessions in F1 history. Alonso was in the McLaren pit box, and Lewis came in straight after him. But when Alonso was given the signal to drive off, Lewis got a bit of a surprise.
Alonso out. Yep, they want him out of there. Now Alonso's not getting on with it. Only a minute 40 to go. Is he blocking Hamilton here? Is that a bit of a tactic within the team there to give Hamilton a bit of a headache? I think it might well be. That's really up to you now, Chubb.
Clearly, Alonso knew Hamilton was behind him, so his tactic was to hold him up so that he wouldn't get another flying lap. The team didn't know what was going on at first, but it didn't take long to click, and it worked. Lewis didn't get to complete his final lap to go for pole. It got even better for Alonso though, because he got another lap and took pole.
Meanwhile, Alonso faster than anybody in the middle sector. Is he going to take provisional pole position on this very controversial day? Drives by. Yes, he does. He goes through on a 19.6, but there are going to be some serious words in the McLaren garage.
But it was short-lived.
Not only did the stewards reject Alonso's explanations, they also found McLaren's actions were prejudicial to the interests of the sport and docked them their constructors' points from this race. So with Fernando's 5-place grid penalty, Lewis Hamilton is now on pole with Nick Heidfeld alongside.
Alonso said the reason he waited in the pit was because McLaren put him on old tyres. On top of that, he even said that they reported him to the stewards.
Ron, what happened there?
We'll discuss it later when it's been discussed in the team.
No one heard my version, or the truth, or the facts. And I said that I never hold anyone. They just gave me old tires when it was qualifying.
Regardless of whose side you're on, it was controversial from Alonso to make matters even worse. Lewis went on to win the race and Fernando finished 4th, so it completely backfired on the Spaniard. If he didn't hold up Lewis and get the penalty, he likely would have finished a few places higher in the Grand Prix, which might have given him those 2 extra points he needed to win his 3rd championship. So even though his first McLaren experience was bad, well, his second one was pretty bad too, but for different reasons, at least he didn't crash into his teammate. On purpose. I say that because on the 21st of October 1990, Alain Prost was going up against former McLaren teammate Ayrton Senna. The previous year, Prost had crashed into Senna at the chicane in Suzuka and won the World Championship.
This is the opportunity that Senna's looking for, and he's going through. Ouch! Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. They beat. This
is what we were fearing might happen during the race.
Exactly a year later in 1990, Senna was still at McLaren, but Prost moved to Ferrari. Apart from that though, it was déjà vu. Their rivalry had well and truly exploded the previous year. The build-up to the 1990 Japanese Grand Prix couldn't have been any better. The pair were fighting for the World Championship again, and Suzuka was so hard to overtake at, whoever was ahead after turn 1 was basically going to win the race. Senna took pole and started on the right-hand side of the grid. Prost qualified second and started on the left, but the surface on the right was dirty, while the left side was clean. Ayrton wanted the pole position moved to the clean side of the track, but when the FIA refused his request, he was furious.
Thank you very much. Huh? I can't stand it. I can't stand this. It's a joke.
Because of this, he said he wouldn't lift into the first corner no matter what happened. What could possibly go wrong? Well, for Prost, everything went wrong. If Prost retired from the race, it would hand the title to Senna. Senna obviously knew this. That's why the overtake was so ambitious, to put it lightly.
Sprints away, but Alain Prost takes the lead. It's happened. Alain Prost has taken the advantage. Senna is trying to go through on the inside, and it's happened immediately. This is amazing. Senna goes off at the first corner, but what has happened to Prost? He has gone off too.
He knew he wasn't anywhere near close enough to go for it, and if he was really racing for a championship, he would have backed out.
And I can tell you he has done 100% deliberately. That's what I don't accept. If there were only 1% chance, I would say, okay, there is a do it, but it is not even 1%.
But Senna didn't care what Prost thought.
Tell us what happened on the first lap by Ayrton.
Well, unfortunately we touched in the first corner when we were fighting for the lead, and we both went off.
I think that's because the pole position is on the wrong side of the track here. You wanted to change that.
Absolutely. You fight, you break your to be on pole, and then they put you on the wrong side of the circuit.
How do you feel about being world champion?
It's not a bad feeling at all, is it?
Congratulations.
He wasn't lying about going for the gap, and on this occasion, it gave us one of the most dramatic title deciders in F1 history, with Senna being handed his second World Championship. But with World Championships on the line, it doesn't get more dramatic than what happened just 4 years later. And that's because in 1994, we were treated to one of the most blatant examples of unsporting and straight-up disrespectful behaviour ever. The 94 season was one of tragedy.
But a spokesman for the hospital in Bologna said there was no chance he would survive. 2 drivers killed in 24 hours. Where does this leave Formula One racing?
It's overshadowed almost everything else that happened on track, but one of the most memorable pieces of action went down at the very last race, the 1994 Australian Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill were fighting for the title all year, and it came down to a winner-takes-all situation at the season finale. Schumacher entered the race in Adelaide ahead and knew that he had to outscore Hill. Schumacher took the race lead at the very first corner, and Hill was driving flat out trying to catch him. The order was the same for the first 36 laps, and it looked like Schumacher was going to win the race and his first title. But then, history was written. In just 2 corners, Schumacher's race was over.
He's turning into the left. He gets too sideways. He goes off. Schumacher's made the mistake. He hits the wall.
But it didn't end there. When he crashed and then rejoined the track at the East Terrace corner, he found that Hill was suddenly right beside him and trying to overtake. But Schumacher didn't yield. To be honest, he did the opposite.
That looks, Schumacher's off. Schumacher's lost time.
Yeah.
Hill goes by.
Oh, out goes Schumacher. The German is out of the Australian Grand Prix.
It was clear instantly that Schumacher's race was over, but it wasn't as clear for Hill. Michael had to stand and watch the race unfold from behind the barriers, while Hill drove back to the pits slowly in his damaged Williams. Once he got back to the mechanics, they checked his car and told him it was over.
Retires from the Australian Grand Prix, and the 1994 World Championship has been won, a lot of people will say by default, by Michael Schumacher, as the Benetton team congratulate each other.
When Schumacher hit him, it damaged his front left suspension too much, and he simply couldn't continue the race. Hill's DNF handed the title to Schumacher, and just like that, the championship dream was over. Hill was heartbroken. To make it even worse, it was clear that Schumacher crashed into him on purpose. In the moment that he hit the wall, it clicked with Schumacher that his race was over. At the very same moment, he realized that his title hopes were over too, unless Hill finished behind him. So, in a split second, the same time it'd take you to hit subscribe, he decided to use his car as a weapon and hit Hill on purpose. But the worst bit of all, he didn't even get punished for it. Everyone knew that it was intentional, so I have no idea why the stewards didn't give him a penalty. All I know is that it's still one of the craziest and most controversial decisions in F1 history. This was the first incident in Schumacher's career that gave him a reputation for being completely ruthless, but it certainly wasn't the last. His antics during qualifying brought attention to him and Ferrari. At this point, he already won on the streets of Monte Carlo 5 times and was hoping to claim a 6th. But there was a problem. In qualifying, he set the fastest lap near the end of the session, but
his time is a 1:13.898 to go fastest ahead of Raikkonen.
There were other drivers who still had to finish laps. Schumacher had a strong feeling he was going to lose pole, likely to his title rival, Fernando Alonso. By now, we all knew Schumacher had no shame in doing whatever it took to get the result he wanted. That day, he wanted pole. I mean, he really wanted pole. And he wanted it so badly, he decided to pull one of his most controversial tricks yet.
Stake somewhere in the middle sector of this lap. 1 second
he's made
to go.
another one at the Rascasse Martin, straight on. Missed the turn in.
Yeah, but that's going to spoil everybody else's lap too. The yellow flags are going to be out, and that's going to keep him pole position. I wouldn't be at all surprised.
This brought out the yellow flags, and everyone behind him on a fast lap had to slow down. Conveniently for Schumacher, this secured pole position. But it wasn't long before things took a dramatic turn. Immediately, eyebrows were raised. It was pretty obvious to most people what had happened. It looked intentional. At the end of the day, it would have been a poor mistake for someone of Schumacher's caliber.
Michael, can you tell us what happened?
Watch the video, and you see that I pushed hard, locked up, started sliding, and run out of road, which is the consequence here in Monte Carlo.
But it didn't go as Schumacher planned.
Michael Schumacher. It was around about 11 o'clock last night that the stewards sent him to the back of the grid, and their judgment was pretty damning.
And to make it even worse for him, Alonso was promoted to P1 and went on to win the race.
Alonso wins in Monte Carlo for his first time. Renault are so strong here once again.
And since I'm talking about insane driving on street tracks, this next example is genuinely one of the most mind-boggling that F1's ever seen. It could have been something to do with the pressure of driving for Ferrari, because Schumacher wasn't the only one to make a questionable decision in red. When you think of Sebastian Vettel now, you think of someone who's a role model, loved by everyone and one of the legends of our sports. On the 25th of June 2017, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix was going down on the streets of Baku. Hamilton took pole, while title rival Vettel qualified 4th.
Sebastian Vettel will be next to cross the line, comes up to the checkered flag now, and it's a 1:41.8. He's been out qualified by Kimi, only 4th fastest.
Catching him early in the race and fighting him for the lead. But when they were preparing for a safety car restart, this was super strange to see from the German, because he was never really this type of driver. He was given a 10-second stop-go penalty.
We have a 10-second stop-and-go penalty for dangerous driving.
Can you give me an explanation when I did?
But at the end of the race, he finished 4th, 1 spot ahead of Hamilton. Once the smoke settled though, he regretted it straight away.
So you said it was the wrong decision. What was the wrong decision?
Well, it was the wrong move, wrong decision. It was the wrong move to drive alongside him and hit his tire. So that's obviously, I guess, what you all want to hear about, but there's not much more to say, I think.
When the season was over, he even said the aftermath was his worst feeling from the 2017 season. Yep, even worse than Singapore.
Away we go, Verstappen gets an excellent start. Sebastian Vettel will need to cover him off. Kimi Raikkonen on the inside, and he's crashed with Verstappen. He's hit Vettel as well. Raikkonen is out before the first corner, and he's gone into the Red Bull there as well.
So in case you were wondering, it's better to not get involved in road rage when you're driving a Formula 1 car. speaking of dangerous driving, it's also better to give your rivals enough space on track. Simple things like giving them a car's width. Michael Schumacher clearly didn't get that memo though, and he proved it on the 1st of August 2010. After 3 years out of F1, he returned with the new Mercedes team. People were wondering if he would be more laid back as a driver and not as ruthless as he was earlier in his career. And this day, we got the answer. He was defending 10th place at the Hungaroring from former teammate and wingman Rubens Barrichello. But for Schumacher, it didn't seem to matter that it was his old mate trying to overtake him, because when Barrichello tried to move on the front straight, this happened.
Is he going to manage it? As they come up now towards the corner, that is a lot better. He's trying to on the inside. Schumacher's almost put him in the wall. Schumacher almost put him in the wall there. Black flag for that, black flag. A real charge across, but Barrichello is through and crucially unscathed, but Schumacher's coming for him again.
I mean, what was that? The stewards thought the move was so dangerous that they gave him a 10th place grid penalty for the next race in Belgium. But to be honest, I don't think that was anywhere near strict enough. A tiny bit closer to the wall, and Barrichello would have had a monumental crash. And who knows what the outcome would have been. It's bad enough doing that to any driver, but to a man who obeyed team orders for years to help you win the World Championships, it was just downright insulting. Horrible. Barrichello obviously thought the same. After the race, he said it was a go-kart maneuver. So Rubens didn't shy away from saying how he really felt, and I don't blame him. That did look terrifying, and I can only imagine what it felt like from inside the cockpit. Before I forget, I want to mention that not all disrespectful moments happened on track, and a great example of this came in 2021. Opinions were divided at nearly every race, but one stood out more than others: my home GP.
We've got royalty, we've got A-listers, we've got 20 of the best drivers in the world. And it's lights out and away we go. Once again, Max Verstappen gets a decent start. Not as good as yesterday. Verstappen's ahead of Lewis Hamilton going through the second turn. Already Hamilton is with him. They almost touch. He's going to try again, this time on the inside. A continent touch. Verstappen is out of the race, and that's a big crash into Cops. Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen coming together. Hamilton continues on.
The impact was absolutely huge. 51G to be exact. 51. Obviously, with a hit that big, Verstappen felt it.
Max, you okay?
And it got worse. He was sent to the hospital to be checked, all while the race was still going on. And in case that wasn't bad enough for Max, Hamilton went on to win the race.
He chases the checkered flag. He wins the British Grand Prix for an 8th time here at Silverstone, and Hamilton is back in the championship hunt.
People at the track still had no update on Max's condition, but that didn't stop Lewis from celebrating his win in the most elaborate way possible. He took a Union Jack flag of the United Kingdom into his car's cockpit and did a victory lap holding the flag out of his car. On top of that, when he got out of his car back into the pit lane, he continued his big celebrations, waving the flag around to his home crowd. This was definitely over the top in my opinion, and Verstappen thought the same.
Not only just a celebration, but also the team, their side, their team, how they celebrated it like it was a world championship win. I don't think you can do that when you just caused such a crash and the guy has to go to hospital for checks. I mean, if it would be the other way around, I definitely would deserve a kicking. And my dad would tell me that. I know that's how I grew up. You cannot do these kind of things.
It definitely wasn't the most humble moment. I mean, even though Verstappen ended up being okay, imagine how terrible Lewis's celebrations would look if that wasn't the case. Remember, Lewis had no idea on Max's current situation. All he could have known is that he was in the hospital. When you think of it this way, it was more than disrespectful. But I'm sure my Hamilton fans will let me know their thoughts. So these were some of the most unsporting and disrespectful moments in F1 history. To be fair, most of the drivers on the receiving end managed to keep their cool. Hamilton, Prost, Hill, Alonso, and Verstappen. None of them really lashed out at their rivals, but that's not always the case. We've seen drivers kick each other, crash into teammates, and even punch marshals out of pure rage. I wanted to uncover some more of these moments, so I made a video on the best or worst times F1 drivers lost control. And as always, thank you for watching.